We'll start with Sandy. I know you just walked in, but.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sandy Misowitz. I'm the Executive Director of CDTC. Welcome. Appreciate you all taking the time out today to participate in this showcase event. And I saw the vehicles out back. Excited to see what we've got to share, and you enjoy the event today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Izdebski. I'm with Plug Power. I'm the Senior Supply Chain Systems Manager. I'm responsible for global logistics as part of that role. So, please meet you all.
Chris Bauer, Director of Transportation Planning at CDTC.
Jacob Beeman, Senior Transportation Planner at CDTC and Director of the Capital District Clean Communities Coalition.
Kendra Helms, President of the Trucking Association of New York.
Can I sit at this side of the table or might as well do that at this side?
These
Anywhere.
days,
I don't know, I don't have a truck, so. Chris Wallen, City Engineer for the City of Schenectady.
Jeff Fatovich, with RPI.
Will Stanton, owner of Northeast Equipment Connections. We have the electric skid steers here today.
Esposito, OEA, and supervisor in the town of Princeton.
Brett Hoteling with Village Boys.
Robertson, Town of Niskuna.
Valerie Dean, New York State DOT Region 1 Planning.
Audrey Burnison, New York State DOT Division 1 Planning.
Century Zone, New York State DOT Main Office. And
And Joe Press, Director of Fleet, New York State DOT.
And then we have a whole bunch of people online. Jacob, maybe you just want to read through them or?
Yes. So online, I'm just going to go from the top. I think we're in alphabetical order here. Amy Johnson, Chaim Simon with CDTC, Jack Dara, Jeff Emerine with BYD Electric Trucks, John Scavo, Town of Clifton Park, Lima Lutan, Dr. Mani, Matt Meyer, Kurt Miles, Thomas Morcan, Nicholas Responti, Susan Olson with DOT Central Office, George Penn, Peter Comenzo, David Rosenberg, DOT, Dave Schmitz, and Eric Vandenberg, GE Gas and Power. If there is anyone on the call that we didn't mention, please introduce yourself.
Go to the next slide. So here's a quick look at our agenda today. We have a jam-packed agenda. I'm going to give a brief update and kind of do the normal freight advisory updates at the beginning here. If Tom Phelan is available, I don't think he's on the line yet. We're going to do a quick update on the regional truck parking study. And then the balance of the meeting after that will be clean communities focus. We'll have a presentation from Jacob about the truck voucher incentive program, and then several presentations from the manufacturers. So first for the CDTC freight planning update, and I'm going to send all this out in the meeting notes, so don't worry about trying to copy down any links or anything like that. But I wanted to let you know first about a couple of new tools that are available for freight planning. The first is I wanted to let you know about the completion of the National Cooperative Highway Research Program Report 998, which is planning freight efficient land uses. This was a project that was completed by our partners at RPI and UAlbany. It has a lot of good information for locals about and for our region about planning freight efficient land uses. We're going to have a presentation on this report at our December 20th CDTC New Visions webinar. So if you want to learn more about that, you can sign up for that, and I'll include the link to the report when I send out the notes. The second I wanted to let you know about was the FHWA Truck Parking Handbook. It's all things about truck parking development. We'll use it as a resource for our regional truck parking study, and I'll send out that report as well when I send out the notes. You can go to the next slide. Third thing I wanted to let you know about was the ATRI Critical Issues in the Trucking Industry report. Annual report was recently released. where they highlight the top 10 issues from surveys that they do with the trucking industry. And just a couple of highlights that I wanted to note. One is that fuel prices moved ahead of the driver shortage as the number one concern. The last time that fuel was even in the top 10 was in 2013 when it was ranked 8th. Truck parking is 3rd, so that still does remain one of the top concerns and something that we've been talking around this table about for at least as long as I've been here and probably longer. And the economy appeared on the list at 5th for the first time since 2017. So things are changing, obviously, in the world, and we can see that reflected here in this survey. And we can click to the next. And just wanted to let everyone know, and again, I'll send out a meeting announcement for this next year. Our 2023 Freight Advisory dates will be February 15th, May 17th, August 16th, and November 15th, all at 9 a.m. and all here, and we'll all be hybrid meetings. So next on the agenda, we were going to have an update on the regional truck parking study. Tom Fallon's not here, which is a little unusual for Tom.
Walking in.
Oh, there he is. How about that? Boy, that was like a prime introduction. So,
Excuse me.
Sure.
Walter meeting.
No,
Rich Shane Gilchrist, DOT. You go back to the slide on the survey of issues.
sure.
I'm just wondering where the shortage of technicians falls into the list. I don't know if this was the top ones and it just didn't make the cut for this slide, because that is a huge issue that we're all struggling with. We're working with Kendra's group across the entire state, SUNY's, public-private. We can't fix trucks. Nobody's driving them anywhere. So I just want to put that out there and just kind of understand where that fits into this equation.
So, I don't know. We'll send out the report so you can take a look at that when we send out the notes. I know it's not in the top 10, obviously, but in the report, they show like all of the different things that got votes. Even the ones I think that didn't make the list. So I have a feeling you would probably find that there, but that would be where to take a look.
Yeah,
So,
that's
look into that a little
a
bit.
big one there. Sure, everybody in the room is.
We've heard that, yeah, from other fleet managers too.
And I was at the meeting when they presented this, like when they announced the results of
Okay.
it, and there was conversation amongst people in the meeting about the tech shortage. I'm not 100% sure where it landed, but there were responses, where carriers were citing that as an issue. It just didn't raise into the top 10.
Chris, what does CSA for? I think that's what that says, or CNA.
The compliance safety, I don't know what it stands for anymore. They've changed the meaning of the acronym. It's a safety program for motor carriers. Probably the easiest way to.
I think that would probably include like the hours of service regulations, right?
Yeah, it's all based on inspection data.
Okay,
So all the inspection data basically gets dumped into buckets and
Oh, okay.
carriers are given CSA scores, and it's supposed to be an indication of their safety history, but there's issues with it. Which is why it's on the, which is why it's not ranking.
How it's compiled. Okay.
It's how they do peer reviews, how the data is collected. There's some concerns in the industry with it.
Interesting.
From a city perspective, I'm directly involved with our drivers, but from our standpoint, I think it might be tied into driver shortage, but to get the license, there are more requirements. And we're having a hard time getting people to get the license and, going through the process of getting their Class A license, be able to drive our trucks. And then that's leading to, with the shortage of it.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's in the driver shortage or CSA or what part of that kind of it's in there, but I know that that's one of the issues. We used to be able to get people and move people up from like, riding on a garbage truck to driving a garbage truck faster.
Mhm.
And now the process is much more intricate, I guess, and it's hurting us to be able to flip people.
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of retirements too, which is really crunch.
What I think those that are coming into the workforce are starting in a low level of skill sets than previously. Starting here rather than here and can't make the jump as quick. I'm seeing that as well.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I'll make sure I send out this report. It's always something I like to take a quick look through, and It, gives you a great sense of the top issues, at least nationally, that are affecting the trucking industry. You can go ahead. So, Tom, welcome.
Thank you.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot when you walk through the door. But we're just gonna have a brief update on the regional truck parking study and, so.
Yes, and I think we had presented our initial results in the data collection to this group at our last meeting in August. And what we're working on now here is taking the numbers we have and the data we have from the individual parking facilities around the state and around the region, and then the trends that we see moving forward here to compile these into a set of what we're calling a toolkit of recommendations to be used by various practitioners in the industry. It could be at the municipal level on the land use side, there'll be that part of this. There'll also be some new kind of breaking ideas that are coming out at the federal level and opportunities for federal grants to go and address truck parking issues in the context of supply chains and interstate travel. In this region, it really applies primarily to Interstate 90, particularly at the eastern end, as we had talked about at our last meeting, that there's such a limited capacity for truck parking at the service plazas and along the Massachusetts Turnpike at the western end of the state. So you have a real concentration of parking activity in this region right along the border there at a number of truck stops off Interstate 90. What we are seeing at the national level, there's a lot of breaking research coming out, or pending research that's coming out of the Transportation Research Board in Washington to really start looking at truck parking in the context of a full supply chain, not just as, hey, truck driver needs to meet hours of service rules, has to park for a certain defined period of time. Where does that parking take place? How many spaces are needed? That's kind of what the world has been like up until this point. What we're starting to see now, and COVID drove a lot of this because of the complications that came out of this when these supply chains were disrupted. To look at parking as just one step in the supply chain and perhaps mitigating the need or reducing the need for parking by having the overall supply chain operate more efficiently. So you don't have a case where drivers can only get 6 or 7 hours in a driving day instead of the 11-hour max or something between 10 and 11 hours, which might be more reasonable if the different players along that supply chain can be more effectively coordinated. They're not waiting to stage, they're not running out of hours at the end of a day when a warehouse is closing and that sort of thing. So we'll be talking about that in the products that come out of this study, but I just wanted to bring everybody here up to speed on that because that's something that we didn't necessarily envision early on in this process that's starting to now get a lot of attention at a national level, which is a good thing.
Great, thanks, Tom. And I know a lot of you are already involved in that project, who are at this table. But if you are interested in getting involved, contact me. I think as Tom kind of mentioned, we're gonna also be doing some stakeholder outreach in the next coming months here too. So I'll probably be talking to a lot of you individually. So great, thanks, Tom.
Hey, Tom, are you talking about public or private? When you're talking about truck parking?
It's actually both, and the complexities of this really relate to some limitations on those. The vast majority of the parking capacity in this region and beyond, and nationally, is in privately operated facilities. It's a truck stop with 50 to 100 spaces in it. You have a lot of public rest areas and service plazas on the thruway that are directly on the interstate system. Drivers generally tend to prefer those, but there are a lot of limitations on this. The thruway is a rare exception to the rule that you're not allowed to have retail services in these. So having a rest area on, say, Interstate 87 up on the Adirondack Northway is really a cost center for a DOT. There's a cost involved in maintaining it and building them and expanding them. And the ability to recover the cost of this through the users directly is almost non-existent. So the focus for really big substantive parking expansions is likely to be on the private sector side because they have the ability to use the parking to support a retail operation that's a commercial enterprise, and they also have the ability in cases where it really makes sense to fold parking fees into their structure, which you can't do on the interstate highway system. So we're looking at this in both ways, and we'll describe this as limitations of one versus the other. But just in general, the private facilities are far and away the most, in terms of the sheer number of parking spaces, they dominate the industry.
I was involved in my private capacity Kind of that pilot station at 88, 90.
Yep.
And it was one of the first, and everybody said they're gonna flock to it, and I said, I don't know what we're designing this for, you know, because it was massive, and we're doing truck movements and all that, and now when I drive by it, it's jammed.
Yeah,
There's trucks on the street trying to get into that thing, and I'm like, okay, so just supply and demand with economy, you would think that someone would build another one.
it is,
you know?
but what you start to get into here is the economics of real estate. These are they tend to be easier to construct in outlying areas or rural areas where there aren't a lot of competing land uses. Like I often say, a truck parking space is rarely ever going to be the highest and best use in the places where you really need that truck parking space. Because whether you're a municipal government or you're a real estate developer, you're going to be looking at, well, maybe we do need truck parking in general, but for this particular location, this parcel, I want something else. I want residential, commercial, whatever it might be, industrial, warehouse space, whatever it is. So right there, you have the combination of two things. It's at the far fringe, outer fringe of this region, the CDTC region, but it's also at the junction of two interstates. So you could probably build 500 spaces there and it would get filled up. The question is, who has the resources to build the 500
At
spaces?
which spot would this be?
This would be the pilot out at
88 and 90.
88 and 90.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just saying in
No,
general,
I know.
terms that because it's an attractive location and there's nothing to meter the demand because it's free. Truckers from farther away would come there if they had this, if they knew the space was available. So you could possibly justify building 500 space. I just threw
Yeah,
that number
I got it.
out. But how big of a retail store could you build? You know, taking a truck stop from 100 to 500 spaces has a huge cost involved. You're not going to make the building 5 times bigger, and then you're not going to generate 5 times more business at the truck stop. So those are all the considerations that come into play when the truck stop operator looks at how many spaces they need or want or can build at a facility.
Excellent, thank you, good conversation. So, all right, we're gonna move now, into, the next part of the agenda, which is, the multimodal alternative, fuel vehicle showcase. And, we're gonna start with a presentation, from Jacob Beeman about the New York, Truck Voucher Incentive Program. And then after that, Jacob's gonna kind of walk us through a series of presentations from our, friends from the manufacturers who are here today. So Jacob, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Right. Am I sharing all right?
Yep.
So thanks, Chris. Yeah, as Chris mentioned, so this is, we're going to kind of get into our multimodal alternative fuel vehicle showcase here. We've got some presentations from a number of manufacturers, but I'm going to start out the presentations with some information on the New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program. And so this would really be, a funding opportunity that would be available for some of the vehicles that we're going to be talking about here today. And so just, real quick, we'll talk a little bit about the background of the program, some of the most recent updates that came about earlier this year, where the program funding is coming from, and then kind of get into a little more detail on some of the criteria and requirements that a fleet would need to meet to access this funding. So first off, really what is the program at a high level? The program is about $58 million of incentives to support the electrification of medium and heavy duty trucks in New York State. This is a voucher program, so it's used to reduce upfront cost of the vehicles. It's not a tax credit where you're getting it after the fact. It's really there to take away that kind of initial cost of the vehicle to help fleets access alternative fuels. Another big piece of the funding is that there is a scrappage requirement. So in order to access these funds, you will need to scrap an older diesel vehicle that is already part of your fleet. And that is, kind of one of the biggest criteria that a fleet would need to meet to access this funding. So some of the updates, these were kind of changes in the program that went into effect earlier this year. Prior to April 1st of 2022, this program funded all alternative fuel vehicles, so hybrid electric vehicles were eligible, CNG and propane vehicles were eligible as well. However, as of April 1st, this is now a fully zero emission vehicle program. So this is only funding for battery electric vehicles and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. Another big change that happened earlier this year, this is kind of tied to COVID still and global supply chain issues. There's, basically there's a voucher redemption timeline that was extended from 12 to 18 months. So basically what that means is if you were to access or go after this funding and be approved, previously you would have 12 months from voucher approval to where you would actually redeem the voucher or receive the vehicle. Since a lot of manufacturers can't necessarily meet that timeline anymore, that's been extended to 18 months with an extension possibility up to 24 months. So that was, kind of constricting some of the vouchers due to the supply chain issues. They just weren't able to get the vehicle.
So do you have to take delivery or does that have to be?
Delivery. So what is this funding for? Class 8 zero emission vehicles. Again, that's fuel cell EVs and battery electric vehicles. So on-road trucks, transit buses, school buses, and then there's also a separate category for non-road port cargo handling equipment. So a variety of different on and off-road vehicles are available. And obviously many of you know in the room, so class 3 through 8. So this is really vehicles with a gross vehicle weight of over 10,000 pounds. So what is the program funding? Where does it come from? It's actually kind of a mix of different fund sources. There's about $10 million of congestion mitigation and air quality improvement program funds. So this is a federal fund source, and this kind of part of the program is administered by New York State DOT. And then the remaining funding is Volkswagen settlement funds. And so it's kind of split up between the vehicle classes. So really this is kind of just, we'll call it like back-end information. If your fleet were to go to access this funding, as long as you know you're eligible, where that funding comes from is kind of just sorted out by NYSERDA, and they make sure that you're getting the money from kind of the correct pool. I'm going to quickly glance over this one. I don't know how relevant it would be to a lot of the folks in the room here today. If you were looking to access a school or transit bus, the vehicle would need to be operated or depoted within 0.5 miles of a disadvantaged community. And NYSERDA has maps that would tell you where those are. So you would just need to prove that. If you're not actually depoted in that location, the bus's routes would need to operate in a certain radius of these areas. But for trucks, this requirement does not apply. So a little bit more into the scrappage requirements, because this is one of the bigger barriers into the program. So as I mentioned, you will need to scrap an older diesel vehicle to access these funds. And part of the reason of that is the state is looking to pull older, dirtier diesel vehicles off the road and then replace them with new zero emission vehicles. So the scrap diesel must be between 1992 and 2009 model year, and it must have a similar weight class to the vehicle that you're going to be replacing it with.
On the scrappage piece, I know the feds had some regulations on that, and it varied. So in some cases it was you had to cut the frame in half. The others had to damage the block so the engine couldn't run again. Is it limited to that, or do you have to destroy the entire?
It is both of those things that you just mentioned. So this slide here, well, and then in addition to that, it needs to be done by kind of an approved scrappage facility as well, and at a certain time in the process. So, right, as Shane mentioned, so the scrappage needs to be done to program requirements, which is a 3-inch hole in the block, and chassis cut between axles. So, right, totally disabling the vehicle. And then it's also recommended that a fleet representative is there. And then in some cases, there can be a NYSERDA auditor or NYSERDA staff member there to kind of make sure that things are done according to the program as well. And then there's a number of different kind of reporting requirements with that scrappage. Pictures need to be taken. Obviously, paperwork needs to be done, but this needs to be done after the voucher is approved. So, it can't really, you need to have the vehicle in operation as you're going into this program. And then it's at the point that NYSERDA says, yes, you're approved, then they'll scrap it. So if you had a vehicle, say today that you scrapped and you went to NYSERDA and said, hey, I'm looking for this funding, I just scrapped the vehicle, that's likely not going to be eligible. So hold on to those vehicles if you think you may be interested in this.
They changed that. Because
So-
aren't they not allowing, like, if you don't, because the scrappage requirement's problematic for a lot of companies that want to move into the zero emission because they may not have other vehicles.
Right.
So I thought they were now allowing companies to essentially purchase an older vehicle,
Yep.
but they may not have been operating the vehicle, so I didn't think the operating requirement was still,
So it is. I think that's the next slide.
sorry.
Or 2 slides away.
Yeah.
But yes, right, you can go out and purchase. So if your fleet does not have an existing eligible vehicle, you can go out and purchase those vehicles from a different fleet. However, they need to be met by the previous owner. So really what this, and a couple more slides, we'll get into what those usage requirements are. Basically, the vehicle needs to be kind of registered and operating and on the road. If it's in, a 2008 that's been sitting in the back of the lot and off the road for a couple of years, that you want to use, oh, perfect, I can go scrap that and get access to this new funding. That wouldn't necessarily qualify. So yes, there is an option to go purchase a qualified vehicle, but that also needs to meet previous usage requirements. I will say, so there was a time that some of the funding in this program didn't require a scrappage. And that was coming out of, that goes back to like the fund source. Anything that's Volkswagen settlement funded needs the scrappage. There were some instances where the CMAQ funded vehicles did not need to scrap a vehicle, but as far as I know, that funding's exhausted. So anything from this point forward would need scrappage.
If you had a vehicle in that age bracket that was retrofitted, that required to be scrapped, that'd be get credit for that and still sell it.
I don't think that you would be able to get credit for that. I mean, I don't know if I've heard of that. Retrofitted.
You're compliant.
You want to get credit. You still have to meet the scrappage.
Yeah, I mean,
requirement.
as far as I know, there's really no way.
It's a huge issue. We've been having conversations with NYSERDA about it because it's a disincentive for a lot of companies to move into zero emission. So I don't think there's any way to.
Yeah, because I know the Thruway had retrofitted a number of vehicles that fell category and surplus them. They wanted them disabled, whole block. They went back and forth, but they were able to actually sell them because retrofitted. Maybe different programs, so.
Yeah,
I
they're
don't know.
selling versus trying to access the grant funds. So there's different.
The other thing is for the municipalities in the, I can tell you with DOT, this was an absolute nightmare. Because stuff all over YouTube, this is a waste of taxpayer money, why did they ruin this vehicle? So if there's anything that can be done to help the municipalities with getting in front of the negative PR for that would go a long way with this, because we got hammered for cutting frames in half and.
Yeah, and I will say, so I've been an auditor at some of these scrappage events, and they are even when the vehicle gets to the scrapyard, you know, the scrapyard itself needs to do things in a certain way that makes it, you know, more difficult than a typical scrap for them to. So, you know, we've heard the, you know, we'll say the complaints, and it certainly still is a barrier to accessing these funds. And I think NYSERDA is well aware of it, but there's not a whole lot. I believe it's written into like the Volkswagen settlement funding. Kind of cut and dry at this point. So voucher amounts, this would be the individual amounts that would be able to be accessed per vehicle type and vehicle class. So again, that you'll see on the bottom there was an other with a red line through it. So these would have been those other project types that would have been not required to have scrappage. But again, that funding has been exhausted. Excuse me. So right now, kind of the big numbers to think about here is if you're looking for on-road trucks, that the program can fund up to 95% of the incremental cost, capped at about $185,000 if you're interested in a Class 8 electric truck. And then for transit and school buses, they up to 100% of the incremental cost in those disadvantaged communities, up to $385,000 for a Class 8 transit bus, and up to $220,000 for a Class 8 school bus. And then the port cargo handling equipment, up to 90% of the incremental cost, capped at $170,000 for new electric vehicles and $140,000 for repowers. The one thing with the non-road port equipment, I do believe that there are certain ports in the state that are able to access this funding. I don't believe it's all ports. And I do believe that those ports are mainly in the New York City area. So it's something I've dug into a little bit. And yeah, Mike.
I just got a question. Is that electric and hydrogen?
I'm not sure. So that on here, it's saying battery electric vehicle, but I would think if there's a hydrogen zero emission vehicle, maybe there's not any on the list yet. But I could look into that.
Yeah, please, thank you.
So eligibility at a high level, these funds are able to be accessed by any public or private fleet. However, federal government fleets are not able to access this funding. No single fleet can claim more than 25% of the funding in any category unless you're a transit agency or you're accessing transit buses. They would be exempt from this requirement, as well as the port handling equipment. And then so now we're getting into kind of those eligibility requirements of vehicle use. So when you do purchase a vehicle through this program, it needs to be operated for a minimum of 5 years and meet usage requirements, which we'll go over the next slide. And then also the fleet would be required to report on the vehicle over the next 3 years. So there would be some paperwork that would need to be filed with NYSERDA to kind of verify the use of the vehicle and kind of some feedback on it as well, what I understand. If lease vehicles are eligible, but the lease term must be at least 5 years. So these are the eligibility requirements now that we've referenced a few times, and this is key in accessing those funds. So as I mentioned, the vehicle, can't necessarily be, sitting in the back of the yard with no plates. For the vehicle that you're scrapping, it needs to be for a truck at least 5,000 miles annually over the 2 most recent years. That requirement was changed during COVID, where it was saying the previous year, but they're extending it to the 2 previous years if there was kind of a low year in between. Transit buses must be part of the active fleet. And then for school buses, they need to be driven at least 2,500 miles annually over one of the last 2 years. And then for port equipment, at least 700 hours of service past 2 years. And then, so for the new vehicles, there's similar requirements, 5,000 vehicles or 5,000 miles annually over the 5-year service period for trucks, and 15,000 miles a year for transit buses, 8,000 miles a year for school buses. So, you know, really that is going to be one of the biggest things, you know, having that scrapped vehicle that is meets these the pre-service requirements is going to be one of the big barriers. Involved
Hey,
parties,
Jacob.
yeah.
We have a question online, or Dave has his hand raised at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jacob, on the requirement, the slide, back one slide, for, like yard trucks, jockey trucks, yard hostlers, whatever you want to call them, there's a million names. They actually fall under the truck category, and 5,000 miles is not really attainable on some of these trucks, but they'll be, so it needs to be in hours. And we talked about this and they told us that it just had to be greater than 1,000 hours, but it's not outlined in the reg. Are they adjusting that? Because I don't know that we'll get to 5,000 miles. We just bought 2 of them, and they're running every day, all day, but they're not going to get to 5,000 miles. Our yard's not big enough to accomplish that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is here in the 1,000 hours of service. I mean, I would say, NYSERDA told you that?
In the reg, I can't find it in the reg. So I was just trying to make sure that I wasn't going to get, you know, down the line here in trouble with it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, so are you already working with folks over there?
At NYSERDA? Yeah, no one's called me since we put them in service, no. But we haven't had them in a year yet, so we don't have to submit our paperwork.
Okay.
So he's talking about though.
The existing.
The existing truck, not the scrap.
Right, right.
Is a problem.
I mean, I don't necessarily know that. I would say take their word for it, but
yeah, no, thank you.
I mean, so from what I've dealt with them, at least, you know, as long as, you know, right, you're being forthcoming about it and working with them, and they've kind of given you that guidance, I would go ahead. But I mean, I can certainly try to check in and see if they have a, you know, a clearer answer. But, you know, ultimately NYSERDA is, you know, administering the program. So their blessing is the word of that's all you can go by. So
I don't know who was talking. I had the same question. I wrote my fleet guys about it because 5,000 miles in the city is a lot of miles.
Yeah.
Even for our, you know, our trucks that are on the road, not in a yard. It's a lot of miles. I mean, I have a city vehicle that I've had for like 9 years. And I think I have like, I don't know, 8 to 15,000 miles on the thing. Cause all I do is drive around the same, you know, area.
Right.
So the hours would be more applicable if that was possible.
but even you're saying those would be on-road vehicles.
Yeah, cause that's only off-road.
Well,
with this truck?
yeah, I mean, I think probably what Dave's getting at is that those yard trucks are technically off-road vehicles. They're not driving on the road. So even if you were an urban environment on-road vehicle, they would still expect that same.
But
Are we all talking off-road vehicles? I don't see that class.
no, but it's classified as an on-road vehicle. I had to actually register it because we're not a qualified port, so I had to use the truck voucher program and register a yard truck as an on-road vehicle, even though it never leaves our yard. I mean, that's one of the other issues with this. You know, there's lots of money in the non-road port bucket that nobody utilizes, yet, you know, companies that have a lot of traffic, so to speak, in their yards, we can't access that money.
Does that change your insurance requirement? I wonder.
Yeah. A lot of this comes down to the difference. Like you might have a vehicle that is capable of being an on-road truck at some point in its life, but it's not functioning as opposed to this non-road port cargo handling equipment, which is very different. This is not something you would ever take out of the yard. It's designed to work inside the gate in the port environment. So it's like you said, those yard tractors are that easy.
No, I
A
don't.
yard tractor can't leave the yard. I mean, I can't register, it can't pull if it has an articulating, fifth wheel, so it raises it up and down, I can't take that out onto the road.
Okay, so you're
Registered
saying,
or unregistered.
okay, I'm not understand that I wasn't understanding what you meant by the yard jockeys.
The perfect application for.
Yeah. Right, because it's in this, if you're not traveling more than a few hundred yards away from the plug in the wall, so to speak, it's an ideal application for like.
But you're saying, Dave, that you're forced to register that just through the program.
I have to register it as a truck, an on-road truck, when in fact, it's really a non-road cargo handling equipment. I'm gonna take the port out of it. That's really the misnomer in the fleet eligibility, is that in tying that vehicle to a port, it eliminates the opportunity for lots of companies to start utilizing it. And it does really give you an entry into EV, right? Because it's somewhere you can control it. You know, you can get it to the plug if you have to.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess to follow up on, I mean, I can dig a little deeper with NYSERDA to see if we can kind of hammer out the, you know, your requirement there to make sure that you're meeting it, if that's helpful.
Well, it's just something that I think, you know, something that they need to, I told them this when we did the agreement this year, was that it's something I would like them to look at, just from an adoption perspective. You know, we have 6 of these things and I would gladly continue down the path, but the eligibility is just not there now.
Okay. So wrap up, so involved parties, so again, to access this funding, there's a couple of different players. First being the manufacturers of the vehicle. So for a vehicle to be eligible, the manufacturer needs to submit an eligibility application to NYSERDA. And then the contractors or dealers also need to be an eligible contractor or eligible dealer. And they also need to submit an application to NYSERDA. And then, of course, the fleets who are going to be the end users of these vehicles, that's where you come in and then, you know, work with those contractors to access the vehicle. One of the big things is that there is an eligible vehicle list that exists, but that does not mean that only those vehicles are eligible. It would come, this kind of where it comes into play is if there's a specific vehicle that you may be interested in that's not already on NYSERDA's list. You can then kind of work with your dealer and work with that manufacturer to get them to submit the materials needed to NYSERDA to make that vehicle eligible for the program so that you could access it. And then, so the process, the fleet is going to initiate the purchase from the contractor and make sure that they have the eligible vehicle to be scrapped. The contractor, so the dealer, is really the one that's going to submit the voucher application to NYSERDA. Make sure that they have all the terms and conditions that are needed for the purchaser. NYSERDA is going to review that voucher, and as long as everything is satisfactory, they will reserve that funding for your voucher. Contractor then completes any documentation that they need to do and document the final sale and delivery. And then once that vehicle, the existing vehicle, is scrapped, NYSERDA makes sure everything is up to their requirements and then issues payment to the contractor. So really the payment is between the contractor and NYSERDA. The fleet is not necessarily involved in that. So a lot of these questions, there is a voucher help center. If a fleet is interested, you can obviously kind of reach back out to me. We have connections with the folks that are managing this program. But this voucher help center is also, a real good place to start if you may be, thinking that you want to access this program, or you don't have a vehicle and you're interested in, what does it take to purchase an eligible vehicle to scrap. This help center would be a great place to start. And then, of course, right, we're talking about the vehicles, but when we're talking electric, there's an infrastructure side of this too that this program doesn't necessarily directly fund, but there are a number of state programs through the utilities that are offering assistance in upgrading the infrastructure for medium and heavy duty fleets. Excuse me, there's more information on this on the Joint Utilities of New York webpage there, but also, again, reach out to us. We've got some good contacts with National Grid, who's offering a fleet evaluation service where they'll come in, take a look at your fleet, take a look at what your needs are and what you'd be interested in transitioning to an electric vehicle, and they'll tell you kind of what the upgrades you're going to need, and they offer funding for a portion of that as well. One thing to point out, though, the utility upgrades are just on the utility side, so that's not actually paying for the plugs and the infrastructure that would be kind of on your private side. So that's it for this presentation. We can ask a few more questions. I think we've got time. Did I see a question down here? Did you have a? Thought I saw a hand up. That's all I've got. We can discuss a little more.
On the utility side, just I'll say more. It's not a question because we went through more of a comment for you to take back than I started on this. Is like the grid's hands are kind of tied on this. Not only can it not be it couldn't be on our side, it had to be on grid side to do any upgrades. But additionally, it had to be available to the outside public, which is not really feasible on a lot of these projects. We're the food industry. We don't just let anybody in our gates to come in and plug into the chargers and things like that. Not to mention the cost of them using our electricity. So it's really something else that needs to be addressed in the legislation as we work forward, is that National Grid they had a ton of money that they wanted to give us, and none of it could actually help the electric jockey trucks we were installing. It all was to like put more car charging in, which is sort of defeats the purpose of the program.
It was just standard level 2 charging that had to be publicly accessible. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Thanks, Dave. Okay, if there's any other questions, we can on then to our next presenter. So at this point, we will be moving to our virtual presentations. First up, we are going to be hearing from Jeff Emery of BYD Electric Trucks. He's going to be talking about their 8Y electric yard tractor. So Jeff, feel free to, actually, I've got to stop sharing and you can take it away.
Okay, I just shared. Did it come up?
I see it online, but it's not in presentation view yet.
Yeah, okay. No, just want to make sure it was up there. Okay. You guys can see it, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Jacob, thank you. And I want to thank you for inviting me to be a part of this, and the CDTC for hosting this. So my name is Jeff Emerine. I'm the regional sales manager for BYD Electric Trucks. I live in Rochester, New York. and I cover the Northeast. And I do come from a truck background. I sold diesel trucks for a long time, so I'm familiar with what truck fleets have to go through and their needs and things like that. So my goal is to just kind of do an introduction of what BYD, who we are, and what we offer. Switching to electric trucks is a big move for any truck fleet, and it's not for everybody, but there are some applications where it is a good fit. So I just want to kind of do a quick introduction, go through some slides just to kind of show what we offer and what's out there. So just some quick facts. So BYD started 30 years ago as a battery manufacturer. So they started with the lithium ion batteries for computers, cell phones, things like that. So as they grew, they got into the bigger batteries and into other markets. So we're a global company, 250,000 employees worldwide. They have a presence in Asia, Europe, South America, Canada, Mexico. I mean, they're everywhere. So our North American operation is based in Los Angeles, California, and we do have a 550,000 square foot manufacturing facility in Lancaster, California, which is about 50 miles north of LA. And that factory is where they manufacture our buses, and that's where our trucks go through final assembly and quality control before they get delivered to an end user. So, BYD is a global leader when it comes to electric bus deliveries. This slide shows 53,000. I actually need to update that. It's closer to 70,000 buses now that they've delivered worldwide. And a lot of that technology, crosses over to the trucks. So, our technology's been out there for quite some time, and it's proven and it works. So here are some of the divisions. So, BYD's only focus is battery electric. We don't do diesel, we don't do hydrogen, no other fuel sources. Battery electric is it. So we do forklifts, we do transit buses and school buses, we do commercial trucks, passenger vehicles. They still do the electronics, of course, and then they do batteries and energy storage. And then they also do a SkyRail, which is, for bigger metropolitan areas. So our factory in California is ISO 9001 certified. I'd just like to mention that just, to kind of, ensure that we have the highest quality standard of our products. And then we have roughly 900 employees that operate BYD North America, and they're spread all across the United States. Most of them are in California, but you got me on the East Coast, and we do have a service center in New Jersey, and we have some presence in some of the southern states as well. So I'm just going to jump into our battery. So this is the core technology is our battery. And like I said, BYD, started as a battery manufacturer. So when it comes to the battery technology, they're on top. So our standard warranty on our batteries is 8 years. So, that right there, is a pretty good feeling that you're not going to have to buy a battery, for 8 years, because it will be covered under warranty. But we do believe, depending on cycling and things like that, that our battery should last anywhere from 8 to 10 years, but possibly more, again, depending on cycle time. So, 8-year warranty is pretty good, compared to what some of the other manufacturers are offering. Our batteries are some of the safest out there. They go through rigorous testing, impact, dropping, vibration. There's all kinds of tests they go through, and they are, they remain stable and they're safe. And longevity, 10-year track record. We have, like I said, these batteries have been in buses and trucks in Europe and Asia for several years now. So a lot of miles on them, and it's proven technology that works. And then our battery chemistry. So BYD uses a lithium iron phosphate battery. Why that's important is some of the other batteries out there use, heavy metals and toxic electrolytes, which can make them unstable if there is, an accident or something, if it's punctured. So with BYD batteries, the iron phosphate batteries don't have any toxic electrolytes and no heavy metals. So I'll go to the next slide here, and you can see some of the safety testing, the impact, the puncture, fire test, the crush, the vibration. They remain stable. They don't, I've seen videos online where some other batteries that have the heavy metals, when they go through a puncture test, it'll actually create, an explosion. And then the battery will be on fire for a long time. You may have seen things on the news about cars that, the firefighters can't get the fire out because of the batteries. Our batteries don't do that. They remain stable, and, they're safe. This is some of the battery certification. Just going to go through this really quickly. It's, this just shows that our batteries do meet, all the standards, meet or exceed all the standards. This slide just shows some of the testing that they put the trucks through, the buses, and all of our vehicles through, just to kind of show that we really do run them hard, and they really do beat them up to test them to make sure that the batteries are going to hold up, make sure they're going to be safe, and make sure that they're going to operate in many different conditions. So this next one's important, because I know this is brought up a lot when I'm talking to clients, is, how are they going to operate in the cold? So they do extreme weather testing, extreme heat, extreme cold. And again, the batteries perform very well. They hold up. And a lot of that is because of that iron phosphate chemistry. It's just, it's a good setup for, for these large batteries, for these, large trucks and buses. So our powertrain everything is proprietary to BYD. So BYD makes the batteries, we make the controllers, we make the axles. We don't partner with anybody. All the technology is our own, and everything comes from BYD, and it's a big advantage for us. I have direct access talking to engineers, where if customers have a certain need, if they they feel like something, there's some technology that would work well for them or everybody in the industry, I can take that to the engineers, and they listen, and they can design things and change some of our technologies to work better for other applications and for other fleets. And I just mentioned too, our trucks do have regenerative braking, which is a huge benefit. It's going to reduce your brake wear, and it also kicks energy back to the batteries. So I'm going to jump into some of the markets that we serve. So, terminal operations, distribution centers, refuse, and then distribution and logistics. And now I'm just going to go through some of the models, the truck models that we offer, just a brief overview of what they're capable of, what class they're in, and just kind of show you what what BYD is offering right now. So our Class 6 truck it's called the 6F. It's a non-CDL 26,000 GVW truck. It comes in 2 battery capacity options. The lower battery capacity option, you can get about 120 miles, or more range, and then the larger battery capacity, you can get 160 miles or more. And as you can see, these trucks, 523 horsepower, 2,300 foot-pounds of torque, plenty of power, plenty of torque. These trucks really do get off the line and move. So they do work. They work for box trucks. They work for reefers, flatbeds, pickup and delivery. So there are a lot of applications that this Class 6, will be a good fit. Moving on, this is our Class 8. So this is our tandem axle tractor. And what I like to note here is our gross combined weight rating, 105,000 pounds. A lot of the other EV, Class 8 tandem trucks out there right now are only capped at 80,000 pounds. So we have designed ours to be a little bit heavier duty to haul over 100,000 pounds. And, we're finding a lot of success with, operating in seaports, as drayage vehicles, because, a lot of those containers can weigh, over 80,000 pounds. And this, this gives us an advantage that our truck is a little bit more robust, a little bit more heavier duty, and it can haul more weight. And again, this truck comes in 2 battery pack options, and you can get 150 miles or more, or 200 miles or more, depending on which battery pack you select. And again, plenty of power, plenty of torque, and these trucks do fully loaded. They get off the line really well, and and continue down the road. And again, applications for this: drayage, local pickup and delivery, middle mile stuff, depending on, mileage range, and then, distribution and logistics. This is our yard truck. This is probably where we've had the most success. A lot of it is because the application is very favorable for an electric vehicle. It, not driving on the road, I know this was mentioned earlier, the mileage range anxiety is not there because, the truck is close to the charger. So if it needs to be plugged in, it can just be taken, right over to the charger and plugged in. But these trucks do have a gross combined weight rating of 102,000, which again, we made them a little bit more heavier duty so that they can operate in seaports and move the heavier loads. But they also work well. We have them deployed in large distribution centers too, across the United States. So they work well in both applications. And you'll get at least 16 hours of working range, but that's on our small battery pack. The larger battery pack, you'll get at least 22 hours or more on a full charge. And again, plenty of power, plenty of torque. And we have these deployed on the East Coast, West Coast at seaports and distribution centers right now. We got probably several hundred of them in operation, across the United States that are, running now or have been running for several years. So again, like I said, marine terminals, warehouses, rail yards, transfer station, distribution centers. So we make two classes of refuse trucks. We make a Class 8, which is our 8R. And then we, this one, again, as you'll see, a lot of our trucks have 2 battery pack options. This one has 2 as well. And we offer this in 2 configurations. We offer it in a 10-wheeler, and we also offer it with a tag axle. So the tag axle is used for when you need a little bit longer body for a side loader. And then the shorter wheelbase, the 10-wheeler, is used for if it's a rear discharge body configuration. And here's some, available body configurations, side loaders, rear loader, front loader, roll off. And we've worked with all the major body manufacturers to operate on our trucks. So right now we have, there's probably over 10 of these garbage trucks currently in operation that have been in operation for a few years, in and around the United States. And they have a variety of bodies on them. This is our Class 6 refuse truck, and this is a non-CDL refuse truck. So this is kind of an interesting, little truck because being that it's so little, it doesn't hold as much, but it does work for a lot of, towns, cities that are picking up trash at parks. So, we have some of these deployed currently right now in the United States as well that are in operation. But this truck is, 80 plus hours of working range, and this comes in only 1 battery pack configuration, but you can, like it shows up there, the range, you can get about 80 plus hours of working range. So it definitely gets through a full day and back, usually with some charge left. And again, rear loader, bin wash truck, dump truck, stake bed, box truck for this Class 6. So I just want to go through a couple case studies just to kind of show that, this is not new technology for BYD. Our trucks have been out there operating in the United States for several years. So this is a 6F, which was the Class 6 truck. It was deployed in 2017 to a third-party logistics distribution company, and the duty cycle was about 100 miles of urban and highway routing with significant, grades and hills, and it would still return with about 20% charge. This was our Gen 1 product, and I want to mention we are now on our Generation 3 6F. So they've made a lot of improvements. We've learned a lot from Generation 1 to 3. So a lot of the technology has been improved. The battery technology has been improved. So our Gen 3 is going to, outperform this truck, this truck is still in operation today. And it's, it's 5 years old and it's still running strong. This is a case study of one of our 8Ys. This is BNSF Railway. They deployed these, I believe, in 2017 and 18. And again, they were doing it in a rail yard operation. So their duty cycle was 10 plus hours of operating time, heavy loads in the rail yard, and they were returning with 40% state of charge. And again, this was a Gen 1 product, and on our yard tractor, our 8Y yard tractor, we're actually, the Generation 4 track is coming out next year in 2023. So again, many improvements from Generation 1 to the 4. So, just a lot of improvements of, we listen to what operators tell us, and we make changes, and then we improve the technology for the batteries, the powertrain. So, we're even getting better operating times and things like that on our next generation products. This is the Class 8 tandem axle. That picture is the Generation 1 product. So if you saw in the previous slides, it was a more modern design because that's our Gen 3. But this truck was deployed in 2019. And again, it was a drayage operation, 130 miles of highway and hills, hauling loaded shipping containers and returning with 20% state of charge. Again, those are based off Gen 1 numbers. The Gen 3 is even better, outperforming the Generation 1 because of all the improvements we've made. And this is a refuse truck. This is J&M Sanitation. They are in Idaho. They bought 2 of these trucks about 2 years ago, and they actually just ordered 2 more. So that kind of proves this technology works, and it's working great for these guys. They do 8+ hours of bulky item collection, automated side loader, and they're returning with 30% or more charge, after their shift. And like what I'd like to mention is Idaho. I know their weather's not the exact same as ours. They don't get the wind and the snow, but they do get colder temperatures. So, in their winters, might not get as cold here, but, they do have some nights where it's going to get into the 30s and, be cold in the morning. And these guys have had no problems with the trucks operating, in the cold weather, where they are. So, this is just a quote from our president, vice president, and, we're coming up with new zero emissions technologies, technology that's revolutionary. And one of the biggest things I want to mention is our BYD's coming out with something called the Blade battery, which is, going to be even better than what they have now. And what it does is they were able to keep the same energy density of their battery, but in a much smaller, compact, battery pack. So that's going to free up space to do other things with the truck, reduce some weight, and still have the same energy density, same capacities. Actually, they'll have a little bit more, but in a smaller space. So that Blade battery will be coming out. It's already in BYD automobiles, but it'll be in trucks probably within a year or two. It'll be in in all of our trucks. This is just a picture of our workforce in California, and I just like to show this. Just kind of shows the inside of our manufacturing facility in Lancaster, California, where they manufacture the buses and do the final assembly on the trucks. So I know Jacob talked about this. So the New York Truck Voucher Incentive Program, all of our truck models are approved and listed on the vehicle eligibility list. So our 6F, which is our Class 6, our ATT, which is our Class 8 tandem axle, the 6R, which is the Class 6 refuse truck, and the 8R, which is the Class 8 refuse truck, and then the 8Y yard tractor. And those, this slide kind of shows you some estimated voucher amounts. And like I said, again, all these trucks are approved, they're on there. So, we can definitely apply for vouchers for these, for our product line. And that's all I got. Here's my contact info. And, again, I live in Rochester, New York. So, I know this is a lot of information, and transitioning to, an electric vehicle is a big step for any fleet, no matter what size they are. So, I'm here to meet with anybody, one-on-one. If anybody wants to have a meeting, again, I'm only in Rochester, so I have no problem, going out and sitting down with people and, help educating and teaching them kind of about the transition. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. I think that we're going to move direct to Matt Meyer from Banner Mobile Power Systems, and we'll try to try to do any questions for Matt and the rest of our virtual presenters when we finish up the virtual portion before we head outside. So try to squeeze in some questions then if you've got any for Matt. Jot them down, maybe save them for later. Matt, you can share your screen and go ahead if you're ready.
Very good. Thanks, Jacob. Great to be here. Yeah, I'll grab the screen just like Jeff did, and we'll get started. I got just a few slides for you. So I'm with D.D. Banner. We are out of Muncie, Indiana. We've been around about a dozen years. We've been in production a couple of years. This is our mobile power station. But where my story starts is actually in automotive. I spent 15 years in tier 1 automotive supply. So I was there. In fact, I started in automotive in 2008, the same year that the Roadster was introduced by Tesla. So I have a very unique perspective on the EV revolution that we're all caught up in now, because I kind of saw it start from zero or near zero, really, because people look kind of point to the rise of Tesla as kind of what initiated this wave that we're in. So I was in the halls of GM and Ford on a regular basis, and I saw what the attitude was, back in the day, and where it's come to. So it's been remarkable, and it was when I got a chance to meet Gary Danner just over a year ago, and I saw his vehicle and I heard his vision for the company. I knew that there was a technological and a cultural inevitability to the success of his company and companies that would be coming along like it. And I really wanted to jump in and be part of it because of what I had seen in automotive, because I knew of the momentum that was stirred up there and the technology and the breakthroughs that were coming to that space on the road was going to move into all of these off-road spaces. So from farms to ports to municipal fleets, that the EV was coming, and all of these alternative vehicles. So we're pretty new in the off-road space. And we're pretty excited to be in it, but we're going to see the transition there, and it's going to come much more swiftly than it's come in automotive as well, because of this momentum, because of what we're all caught up in. So our vehicle, we like to say that it works, powers, and protects, but really you can just think of it in two ways: versatile, kind of configurable work vehicle. In fact, Gary Danner I grew up on a farm in Kansas. He worked for Case New Holland, ran a store for them out in the Pacific Northwest. So heavy equipment is where he had spent his career. And what he really set out to design was a configurable work vehicle to meet some of the needs of the off-road work fleet. In fact, catching up with the electric part of it, making an EV was a pivot for him about 6-7 years ago. But what's interesting is now Danner is catching the wave of electrification. And so probably more than half now of our inquiries are simply for the need for power and the need for mobile power and mobile charging. So we're kind of catching both sides of that equation. I want to talk just a couple of minutes about both sides of that. And then I will step out of your way and let Jacob get on with his day. So first, from a power side, as configured, as seen there in those pictures, 0.5 megawatt of power on board. So 250 kW below the decks, another 250 kilowatt hours of power or energy stored above the deck. So you got 0.5 megawatt on board for all of those unplanned power needs. Any place where you need to make a resiliency plan, you have to have an emergency preparedness plan. Any place where you would be penciling in diesel generator, right? We're there to meet those needs, because at some point those diesel generators are not going to be part of your plan. I think we all see that coming. And then there's just all the plan needs that you would have, right? So if this is out of the work site and you have power tools, electric power tools need to be run, you might have air compressors that need run. You need generators. You want to have lighting at a work site, all of those kind of variety of needs that we can meet. Or maybe your organization, if your municipality, might have responsibilities to provide power to an event at a local park with a food truck and a sound stage and lighting. And again, imagine being able to provide all of that without the noise and the fumes, et cetera, of a diesel genset. So there's kind of where we start in terms of the power side of our business. And in the middle picture there, you see just some of our outlets. It's configured to export power in a variety of ways: 120, 240, bidirectional 43 phase option if you've got greater needs. But then the other thing that's come with the power side of our business is this need for charging, for mobile charging, to supplement fixed charging assets, or if you're in a spot where you're waiting for more assets to come on board to meet your EV charging needs, this is a great, we're going to slide into that tension between. The easy part is bringing more EVs online, right? You can add trucks, you can add vehicles like Jeff just walked us through, but now you got more vehicles that need to be charged. So we're an asset that can supplement, can augment that those fixed assets, particularly as the lead times grow with all of this NEVI money being spent, all of these projects wanting to be launched at once. Some of those lead times and the regulatory and the red tape can stretch those out. So this is an opportunity for us to step in and supplement that as your EV fleet grows. So a level 2 charger comes on every Danner in one of the side saddles there. But really, if you're looking to bring in mobile charging as pictured on the right, we can outfit this with a fast charging system and have 120 kW output capable. So you could have 260s going at once, or you could have them, flip the switch and have all 120 coming out of just one of the guns there. So that's kind of what we look like from a power side. You can kind of get a good sense from that picture on the right of our footprint. We'll fit into a parking place, but just barely, right? So think of us like a big F-250 pickup kind of size in terms of footprint. And you can, again, you can kind of see how we're set up and arranged to work there. And then on the work side, you can see our skateboard up there. Again, I come from automotive, so that's what I think of when I see us in our base form. Automotive has all pretty much moved to the skateboard idea, where you have all of the batteries and the power systems down below, and you have the freedom to configure up above. So they can put a pickup truck or an SUV or a sedan on top of that base platform, right? So this is kind of, in fact, I was in Atlanta. I showed this slide in Atlanta a couple months ago, and I made the statement, there's our skateboard we stole from automotive. Little did I know that our own corporate attorney had driven down from Greenville, South Carolina. He was in the audience. I didn't know him. We hadn't met. So afterwards, he came up, introduced himself, and he said, "Hey, Matt, nice job in the presentation, but maybe we don't use the word stole." So I had a good laugh with that. So there's our skateboard inspired from the automotive industry. Smart platform, right? Because that's the other way the world is moving, is towards autonomy. So we are already set up and designed to receive autonomous packages to have work done without the need for a human controller. We're already doing a lot of that testing and work, particularly with DoD, as you can imagine. The Defense Department sees a lot of applications for our vehicle. But from that skateboard, from that base, you can see where we can be configured as pictured at the bumper with a 3-point hitch. So you see it with a plow there, or a bush hog if you're trimming and cutting, street sweeper, rotary sweeper, any number of things at the ground attachments there at the bumper. Put the work arms on, and now it functions like a mid-size skid steer, right? The 3-400 series skid steer to put not just a bucket on, but literally hundreds of different attachments that can be received off the universal work arms there. Not attachments you have to buy from us. That's the Deere, Bobcat, Caterpillar attachments, whatever that you already probably own. If you have a diverse fleet that can be received. And then also you've got the open decks that can be used for a variety of things. That's picture on the right there. You see the scissor lift on the deck. And again, you just set that up there with a forklift, a couple of pins, and it gets bolted on. In 15 minutes, it's ready to go. And you have a pull down screen in our computer system. You tell it that the scissor lift is on board, and now it's ready to operate with the remote control. So a lot of different ways you can configure the vehicle. And then at the end of the day, even if you bring this in to do a variety of work, like a material handler is kind of, again, that's a pretty popular configuration to the right there with pallet forks and a scissor lift. You still have 250 kW of power on board for use for in an emergency situation or simply to export. So you don't lose that. It's not one or the other. At the end of the day, you're really working with both sides of that. Again, remote control comes with every unit, but you saw in the previous pictures, you can put a full operator cab on. And then you can go back and forth. So if you're sitting in your operator cab and you're working with the, with the work arms on, but you're in a spot where you're on traffic or you're on a slope or you have to load or unload, the operator can hit a button, step off, grab the remote, and finish work. And with using the remote control, it doesn't just move the vehicle left to right, front and back. It also can work those work arms or work the scissor lift or whatever you have on board. Again, all that weight is down below with those batteries, a nice low center of gravity, very safe. And it's, you know, designed to be that way. So we really are looking to have you see this as a, again, particularly if you have a diverse fleet, is understand the shared asset that we're really looking to promote. So be it if it's infrastructure, emergency response, or different needs that come up through the seasons, you can start to weed out your your diesel fleet. You know, you have a yard full of diesel equipment that most of it sits around most of the time until you have a particular problem or it's a particular season and you have to pull that out, clean it up, get it working, you use it for 3 or 4 weeks, then you put it away again. Instead, start to weed out that diesel, move to a battery electric system that you can put to work and configure day in and day out as, you know, as the fleet manager deems necessary and appropriate. So that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of what the genius is behind our mobile power station. And again, like Jeff just described for you on his trucks, we are also qualified and on the list with NYSERDA and the voucher program that Jacob just walked us through. And we do fit in that, the last category, the material handling equipment category, off-road, and you can kind of see where those voucher estimates there are. And that is it. That's Danner, and my information will be available through Jacob. And yeah, I would love to get a chance to talk further about whether we can find some applications in your business, be it for, you know, for charging at your fleet yard, or if you've got a diverse fleet where you got to do a variety of work, that we can help you in those cases as well. Jacob, that's it. So unless there's something else, I will jump out and turn that back over to you.
That is it. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate the information. Next, we will move to Nick Responti from Zeem Solutions. So Zeem Solutions is actually a medium and heavy duty vehicle fleet as a service provider. So not exactly a vehicle, but just maybe a look into kind of what electrification might mean for investment in the future. Nick?
Great, thanks, Jacob. You can see my screen?
Yep.
Well, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. My apologies for not being in person. I'm actually not too far from where you're located, a little over 3 hours, but as Director of Business Development for Zeem Solutions, I travel quite a bit and I have to get to the airport shortly after this and travel out west. But thanks again, appreciate the opportunity to be here. So a little bit about my background. I come from policy background, government and community relations, for state government, and then transitioned to work for port in government and relations, as well as business development and industry relations for the largest port on the East Coast and third largest in the nation, which is the Port of New York, New Jersey. So strong background in supply chain, transportation, logistics, distribution, and all the good stuff that we love here. Came to Zeem a little over a year ago, first started in a policy role and now focused more on business development. So what is Zeem Solutions? So our mission at Zeem is to transform the way fleets operate by providing an affordable solution for zero emission transportation that improves air quality within our communities. That's certainly a big mission, but at Zeem, you know, there's a lot of other companies out there that new companies that like to consider themselves disruptors. We don't look at it that way. We know very well that the trucking industry and fleets in general have their own disruptions to deal with in the industry. Specifically, we saw on that slide about the survey from Atri earlier. So we consider ourselves, and we are more of a proactive facilitator for fleets to make that transition to zero emission mobility with our fleet as a service and depot operations, which I will speak more about now. So in the most basic sense, ZEEM, zero emissions solutions, we build and operate these zero emission vehicle depots for class 2B through 8 commercial electric vehicles all around the country. So at these facilities, we provide vehicle leasing, typically 3 to 5 years, charging, service maintenance, overnight and secure parking, as well as lounge space, office space, and amenities for drivers. And then also as the industry continues to mature, we will also provide opportunity charging. When a fleet is out running their duty cycles, they can, on a subscription basis, use the charging facilities and infrastructure at these depots as needed. So we provide, a fleet level subscription that includes all those services, and we also could be very flexible with our offering. So one key note, you see these pictures here. What makes ZEEM different? We do literally have current infrastructure, steel in the ground, and operations right now outside of LAX, Los Angeles International Airport in Englewood, California, and we are growing quickly around the country. You're going to see some more announcements over the coming weeks and months about us growing literally across the country. But when we are looking for these depot facilities or properties to build out this infrastructure and provide these services, it's typically near, major transportation assets like airports and seaports, warehousing and distribution, freight railheads, key high activity freight corridors, or just located within urban population centers where there's a lot of fleet activity. We are mainly focused on medium and heavy duty, but we certainly will work with, light duty fleets like transportation network companies and entities like that. So why does ZEEM work for customers? As I mentioned, we do have customers operating now at our current facilities, but as my fellow speakers and others mentioned earlier with their experience with the incentive programs, there are a lot of barriers for electric vehicle adoption for fleet operators. We predominantly work with small and medium fleet operators, which comprise over 90-95% of trucking in general. We understand that they will have the hardest time to make that transition from zero emission mobility. So, we help eliminate all the barriers to do that with our depot facilities and our services that I mentioned earlier. And our goal at ZEEM is to provide a total cost of ownership assessment of the fleet operators that we work with to be at par or below the total cost of ownership of the diesel equivalent. We do that by, utilizing leveraging incentives, economies of scale, operational efficiencies, as well as the technology that we are deploying at these facilities. We provide that all with, 1 monthly fee, no surprises. You'll see it in, a fleet operator will see that in the lease agreement. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we are very flexible that a fleet operator certainly wouldn't need to utilize all those services at the depot. They can pick and choose. Some fleets will choose to own their own electric vehicles, and then they can, use the depot services that we provide without leasing the vehicle from us as well. And at ZEEM, we are, also focused on collaboration in general, whether it be with other commercial industry or corporate partners, as well as public entities that, have zero emission or corporate sustainability goals, or specifically like goals to reduce their carbon impact throughout their supply chains. ZEEM and our services really provide, we are a conduit to accomplish some of those objectives. So as I mentioned, we are building out these facilities all across the country in strategic locations, near major transportation hubs that could align with a lot of trucking and freight activity. We have an innovative mindset. It starts with trucks and transportation, but these depot facilities really serve as centers of clean energy technology. We will be deploying, mobile power units. As Danner, we are certainly looking into Danner. That is a really cool product. So a little plug for my fellow presenter there. Other battery electric storage and innovative concepts, vehicle to V2G, V2X, we are looking into it all, and, a part of efforts to do some of those things already with our existing facilities in Englewood, California. So we also present ourselves and, look to collaborate as pioneers, whether there's pilot programs or demonstration projects that we can get involved in with partners. We are pursuing that and interested to hear more about those types of opportunities. And then, certainly the reason why Zeem was created to, support, environmental improvement and sustainability. While that is certainly important for us, we understand that working with partners and fleet operators that, if it doesn't pencil out and it's not, really within that cost, it's not going to work for a fleet operator or a partner. So we work to make sure we are being on par or below the cost of the diesel equivalent vehicles. So how Zeem works, very simply, fleet operator drives their personal vehicle to the depot, comes and picks up their leased vehicle with us, runs their duty cycle, and literally does the, same thing every day. We take out all those challenges. So a fleet operator or trucking company could focus on what they do best, move people, goods, and services, and we handle really everything else in between with, fully charged vehicle, supervised overnight parking. We have site operations staff on site 24/7, 365, daily inspections, vehicle washes, personal vehicle parking, shared office space if fleets are interested in that, service and maintenance, as well as I mentioned earlier, the lounge space and driver amenities for those fleet operators to utilize. So a little bit specifically about our existing operations. It's 2 sites, as you can see here on this map, that make up approximately 3 acres. So right now we already have a little less than 100 commercial electric, medium, and heavy duty vehicles on site. Right now we have 12 DC FC energized ports, as well as 6 L2 chargers that are operating and working with fleets as we speak. Going forward, we can support hundreds more of third-party EV operations with our high-speed opportunity charging. Again, really as the industry matures and we build out these facilities. Some of the trucks and vehicles we have on site now are electric cargo vans, shuttles, box trucks, and Class 8 tractors. At full build, you see here, we are projecting Q1 next year, so we'll have 77 DC fast charge ports, 53 level 2 chargers, and 10 megawatts of power available. When we are fully built out, this will house, 2 to 250 electric vehicles, and then again, really supporting that opportunity charging service for non-resident Zeem fleets. I'm not going to get into all the numbers on this slide here, but I think it speaks for themselves. This assessment is based off of the Environmental Protection Agency equivalencies calculator. So basically, if this was a perfect depot that had 100 to 200 medium duty vehicles and then 100 heavy duty vehicles, we would be projecting these types of emissions reductions and environmental benefits from a Zeem depot. But what's really cool is all these vehicles now have telematics devices, so we will be able to calculate this specifically per vehicle, per location, per depot, to really calculate what we are taking out of the atmosphere and cleaning up with our operations. Working with LCF, the low carbon fuel credit program in California. We are doing all those types of calculations now and hope to replicate that when a similar programs are available in other states. The state of New York has been looking into that for several years now, so we are keeping track of that for sure. That is very appealing for our industry. And then just one of the last slides here is, as I mentioned earlier, we are rapidly growing around the country. We have very ambitious goals, but we will manage our ambition with pragmatism, and we are very systematic as we identify these properties all over the country, near major population centers and transportation hubs. But these depots, depending on their use cases, as I mentioned with the environmental assessment, like a picture perfect depot could be anywhere from 2 to 5 acres, give or take, depending on the vehicle composition and use case. But for example, if you're going to be located near seaport, we would certainly be focused more on Class 8 drayage operations. Airport would be a lot of passenger shuttling, last mile delivery, cargo vans, things like that. But we are looking to accelerate the fleet electrification, the transition for fleet operators in all of our locations. And as I mentioned before, these depots serve as more than transportation as a service, more than fleet as a service, more than charging. It is this holistic package that we look to work with fleet operators to help make that transition seamless and efficient for both to improve the environment and provide economic savings for our customers. And then we also work closely with our public sector partners, the host communities where our facilities will be located on, community engagement, workforce development, and really just economic growth in general. This is all innovation focused, and as Jacob mentioned earlier, we are not the manufacturer, so we work closely with the OEMs for the vehicles, the charging equipment, other zero emission technology to prove out that, act as advocates for fleet operators with those technology applications. And we are literally kicking the tires, operating, demonstrating, touring facilities all across the country for vehicles and chargers. And we've, another plug to my previous presenter, we've demoed BYD Gen 2 at the Port of New York and New Jersey. Great experience with that. We've also demoed their Gen 3 out in California. So certainly all good experiences there, and we will be looked to growing with these types of partners as well. So that's it for me. I wanted to keep it brief for you all, but happy to answer any questions now as the opportunity is available. But you can contact me anytime. I am based in New Jersey, so very accessible in the Northeast. But again, I'm traveling a lot, getting everywhere. So please feel free to reach out anytime. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thanks, Nick. And so with that, that's the end of our virtual presentations. We are pretty tight on time, but I do want to offer a little bit of time for maybe a question or two for Jeff, Matt, or Nick, if anyone here on the line has a burning question.
Copies of the slide decks for each one?
Yeah, we will have slide decks available, send out the meeting minutes, and we'll post them on our website as well, I think.
Please, if you didn't already, please make sure you sign in the sign-in sheet, so I have your email address.
If nobody has any other questions, I have one for Jeff. I was impressed with some of the numbers you provided in terms of the hauling capacity up to 100,000 pounds for some of your tractors. One of the limitations that I'm coming across in my dealings with the fleet operators that you sell to is that the weight of the battery itself, the weight of the battery powered tractor, is more of a limiting factor. Even if you can haul 100,000 pounds, once you get outside of a controlled environment in a terminal, for example, and you're out on a public road, if there's an 80,000 pound gross vehicle weight limit, what's the difference in the weight between a conventional diesel tractor and the ones that you have listed, particularly those Class 8 tractors?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a good point. The battery packs are heavy. There's no denying that. So the trucks do weigh, versus a conventional, truck with an internal combustion engine, they're going to weigh, depending on the battery pack size, they could definitely weigh 3,000 or 4,000 pounds more, the truck. And if you're hauling over the road, I do know federally, 80,000 pounds is obviously the limit before you need a permit. They do allow 82,000 if it's a battery electric vehicle. So you can get an extra 2,000 to haul legally, to do 82,000, which does help a little bit offset the weight of the batteries.
Right. Okay, good, thanks. And that's even impressive because that number has been much higher in the past, and these batteries are obviously getting lighter. And as you
Yeah,
said, density,
yeah.
and energy density.
Yeah, the technology is definitely, it's gotten, like I said, BYD's had trucks deployed for over 5 years, in the market. And since Gen 1 to where we are Gen 3, I mean, there's been a lot of improvements with the battery technology, their powertrain, all that stuff is getting better. And, like I mentioned, the Blade battery, that's even going to help even more because it's going to compact all those components into a smaller box.
Does BYD recycle the batteries at the end of life?
So what BYD does, so since BYD is in the energy storage, game as well, their model kind of is at the end of life, they believe the batteries can be used in an energy storage application for like another 10 to 12 years. And then after that, then they're saying, yes, recycle it. And being that we don't recycle the batteries, but I do know that there are facilities popping up. I just read an article yesterday that there's one in Rochester, actually, a facility that is up and operating now. It's in the old Kodak Park where they're going to be recycling the lithium ion batteries. But yeah, BYD does not. We don't recycle them. But being that our batteries, don't have the heavy metals, they're much easier to get rid of. The batteries that have the heavy metals, it's a much more complicated process to get rid of them.
Thanks. So I think with that, based on our time, we might head outside. So I think the virtual presentation might be over here. Want to thank Nick, Jeff, and Matt for the great information. If there's any lingering questions, you can feel free to reach out to me and I can get a hold of them, or we'll provide the contact information directly to them if anyone is interested. Excuse me, I will say, so Mike, we were going to go outside and take a look at the Plug Power vehicle. You did have a couple slides. Did you want to touch on maybe just a few of those key slides in here?
Yeah, I'll go through it really quick.
Okay. So I will pull up one last presentation here for the Plug Power.
I'm going to speed through it, so some of the technical stuff that's up there, I'll just plow through it.
Actually, I don't think I'm sure.
I'll get to what we're going to show today.
Okay. Just to make sure, are we sharing that properly?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So Mike, go ahead, take it away.
You have my slides.
Please.
Yeah, go to next. Okay. Basically, I'm Mike Zdebski. I'm with Plug Power. We're in the hydrogen fuel space within the renewables. A lot of discussion today about electric. This is another form of renewable energy, and it's like to think this is the future. There's a lot of opportunity in this space, and there's a lot of value benefit created, and it has some things that differentiate from other products that are out there. Next slide. Okay, it's hard to see here, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to take renewable energy sources, be it wind towers, hydro, solar. We're going to create and store hydrogen at power plants, hydrogen production facilities around the United States, globally. Actually, we're working on a deal with the Port of Amsterdam to actually put hydrogen in the port. We'll have tractor trailer fleets that will distribute hydrogen to the facilities that actually consume the hydrogen. And then some of the applications, a little bit hard to see here, but you have our primary use right now is material handling equipment, fork trucks of that nature. What our customers are finding is that, number one, it's cheaper than propane or swapping out. It's more efficient for the people using it, and then it checks the green button. And it's cheaper and it checks the green button. So we've got some really big customers that are buying our product. It generally works if you've got 50 or more fork trucks or material handling units in your facility. We'll go in and we'll put the hydrogen infrastructure in. We supply the hydrogen, and it takes literally 3 to 5 minutes, if not less, to fill. And you think, as opposed to, some of the other forms that are out there, it's really quick turnaround time. Your assets being used, it's not sitting there and getting charged or other things. Next slide, please. These are some of our customers: Amazon, Lowe's, Walmart. The who's who. They basically found out that it works, and that's why we're taking off as a company. Next slide. This is some of the technical aspects. The next 3 slides, we can just quickly go through it. Basically, we're creating power, and the byproduct is water at the end of the day. So when you talk about zero emissions, we're creating it from renewables. It's creating energy off of hydrogen, and the byproduct is water, which we reclaim at the end of the day. Keep going. And I know we're time intensive. Our mission is oxygen. We have go back 1 slide. Next slide. We're going to create a hydrogen network throughout the United States and the world, for that matter, so that we can get the hydrogen to the point of use. Next slide. We're going to be the leader in hydrogen. We're based New York-based company. We have factories in Latham. We just built a new one over in Slingerlands. Got one out in Rochester in the state of New York, and then we've got others throughout the United States. Next. Products that we're producing is actually the ability to, create the hydrogen at a local level and then use it on the applications and in the factories, at the ports, warehouses, wherever that may be. Next. A little bit about the opportunity. Long term, you're looking at a $10 trillion industry. It's going to be large. We'll be a big player in the energy industry, competing against various forms of fossil fuels. Next slide. Again, people that use this in different industries. There's our primary use right now is fork trucks and the savings opportunities. Next slide. Some of our products, we are going to have the yard horse switchers that'll run on hydrogen. Have sprinter vans, which we actually have out in the yard. We're going to show that to you today. Box trucks, buses, tractor trailers, local power, stationary power for data centers, Bitcoin, stuff like that. We'll actually have localized power that runs off of hydrogen. We have a partnership right now with the unit we're going to see outside. Renault builds the body. We build the engines here. We send the engines over to Paris. We assemble it together, and then it gets sold under the trade name of Hyvia, which is a joint partnership between Renault and Plug Power, and that's actually rolling out in Europe right now. It's coming. We've got some work to do in the U.S. to make it happen. That's the vehicle we're going to show for those who are online today. And basically, you have a fuel dispenser that pumps the hydrogen into the vehicle. We find it works best on fleets that go out and come back. Is the best application for it. So that kind of looks like some big package vans you may see delivering around. They happen to be our customers in other applications, and this is another application for our technology with our existing customer base. And it's pretty cool. Good use of technology. It's truly green, and it's going to take off, but it's scalable. Next slide. Ranges and payloads. I know we're almost out of time, but it's going to be available on the slide afterwards. The new diesel, we're going to become an energy company. We're going to produce the hydrogen that our product uses and our customers buy, and that when you take that vertically integrated supply chain, we're going to be able to leverage, cost out efficiencies of operations to really provide a product that works, it's renewable, and it saves our customers money, and it's good for the environment. Next slide. Some of the building blocks, We're gonna put in stationary power. This is the type of outputs of hydrogen per day we can produce. And if you look at a lot of those systems, they fit on tractor trailers, you know, thinking in terms of the road transportation from a DOT perspective. And we've got, you know, massive deals in the way that we're just now starting to deliver these products in the United States. Next slide. Right now, at the end of 2022, we're going to produce 50 tons per day of hydrogen. By the end of, 2025, we're looking at 200 tons per day. We're going to build, a dozen or more hydrogen production facilities throughout the United States. And we only have one other slide, and we can go outside. With the Inflation Reduction Act, it helps us. I mean, it's definitely in our space, and some of the other programs we discussed today that we'd like to tie into that can help, promote the industry. So thank you for your time, everybody. Send email questions and be happy to answer. I know we're going outside now.
Yeah, definitely. So with that, that will be the end of our virtual presentation. So thank you, Mike. We are now going to go outside and hear from Royal Stanton from Northeast Equipment Connections, and we'll be taking a closer look at some of the electric skid steers he has to offer, and we'll be taking a little bit of a closer look into that fuel cell van that Mike has here. Chris, anything to wrap up for the folks on?
Nope, just thanks for the folks online who attended. We'll send out some meeting notes with all this information and contact information, all that in there, so you can get in touch with anybody or Jacob about the truck voucher program. Other than that, thank you for attending. Please, if you're in the room, please sign the sign-in sheet and take a pastry, and we'll see you outside.
Thank you to everyone online.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
all.
having